It's a dobry večer to you all, ladies and gentlemen. Dobry večer to be specific. And to use the usual way we start our broadcasts, welcome once again on the GT Ukraine YouTube channel. And you join me, Prototype, once again for another broadcast from the Asselit Design Endurance Championship. This is Season 1 for 2025. And we're going to be enjoying race number 5 of the season. We're now firmly in the second part of the championship. 4 races done, 4 more races to go, and we are in France at the Circuit de Saint-Croix Layout C Reverse. For those of you who love their Gran Turismo 7 circuits, this is a less popular track to use generally and a rather obscure layout thereof, so I expect the drivers, of course, were preparing, so they will have learned the layout pretty well, but not something that every viewer will be familiar with, this track, Circuit de Saint-Croix. Just to remind you, once again, we're using the X2 multiplier for fuel wear and X5 for tires. So expect a pretty interesting strategic race tonight. Tonight's broadcast is starting just a tad earlier. For those of you interested in watching European football later this evening, we're giving you that space and that opportunity. Right, practice is underway, but qualifying will be starting very soon, and this gives us an opportunity to remind ourselves of the situation in the championship, the standings, and maybe to have a quick look at the cars before qualifying starts. So currently in P13 in the championship is GTO from Team Motion Blur Yellow. He's racing the Alfa Romeo tonight. Quite a disappointing start to the season for GTO so far. He finished 13th once, 12th twice, and then he was 11th in the previous round. But maybe in the Group 4 car he will find the pace he is looking for to also help his team, Motion Blur Yellow. They're leading the team's championship with 476 points, but GT Ukraine and Racing Team Finlanders are both pretty close behind, so it isn't over yet. That's GTO 250. He's in 13th in the championship. In 12th, we have Mark GT, currently P3 in the practice session. He's on 80 points, and it's just the final result. He didn't score any points in the previous race because he didn't participate, and that puts him rather close to GTO, but otherwise he's been doing a little bit better. He's going to be racing the Cayman Group 4 tonight. Then in 11th is H-Boss. Let me try and find him. Is he chilling in the pits? Or has he not joined altogether? He doesn't seem to have joined the session yet. H-Boss is racing the McLaren 650S Group 4 car, and he's a driver for DRHHL Omega, so the sister, the team of the two DRHHL outfits. I hope he'll be joining us a little bit later tonight. Those of you viewing online, let me know if you can hear me well, if you can see it well, if you're having a good time. Give me some feedback on whether you're enjoying what you're seeing tonight. Hey, very nice. I'm seeing some of the first messages pop up. So in P10 in the championship is Vox Bacchus for DRHHL Alfa. He's racing the Honda NSX. 124 points for him in the championship so far, and he skipped the previous race as well, so 0 there. But nothing to worry about, by the way. Just to remind you, we've got 2 drop rounds out of 8, so the 2 worst results for each driver will not contribute to their final tally. So in that sense, Vox Bacchus has not hurt himself by missing the previous race. Otherwise, he's had 2 P4 finishes so far, so pretty strong outings for him, but yet to crack the top 3 in a race. That's Vox Bacchus, P10 in the championship. P9 is Flapjack, currently leading the warm-up session. Flapjack will be racing the Lamborghini Huracan tonight. He's on 136 76 points. A very strong start in the championship for him with a P4 in race 1. Hasn't been able to quite replicate that ever since, but maybe today, who knows. So that's Flapjack P9 in the championship, and we've got the order from the session host that qualifying will be starting soon. But we'll carry on. In P8 in the championship is Vlive. He'll be racing the Alfa Romeo tonight, and he's representing Team Motion Blur Orange. Vlive hasn't had any particularly strong outings just yet. His best result is a P6 in the previous race, but who knows? The Alfa is an incredibly strong car in Group 4. Not in qualifying, but in the race certainly, so Vlive can try and spring a surprise tonight. B7 is Luco, and if I'm lucky, and if I can find him, he's just chilling in the pits for now with an invisible car, it would seem. Luco is racing the Bugatti Veyron Group 4, an incredible big boat of a car in Group 4, certainly. He'll find this to be a difficult race, but still, he's sitting P7 in the championship on 144 points. Is our host Gadget the first person on the track? Yes, he is, as is usual. So qualifying has started. Our drivers will do one warm-up lap, and then they will start their flyers. This is a long circuit, more than 10 kilometers long, and a lap time in these Group 4 cars is close to 4 minutes. So we've still got time to do the rundown. Let's move on. And Gadget, who's on your screens, is P6 in the championship, sitting on 148 points, and he is the first person to have scored a top 3. That is exactly what he has. Third position in the first race, run in the Group 3 cars. He hasn't had that strong of a campaign since, but I'm sure Gadget will have aspirations. He told me personally that the Alfa Romeo is a very strongly preferred car of his. So who knows? Maybe we'll be seeing some fireworks from Gadget tonight. He's on 148 points, P6 in the championship. Now we're cracking P5, and sitting in 5th is Lens, my compatriot, representing GT Ukraine. 176 points for him, and he scored a top 3 finish in race 3 in this car in the Group 4 at Blue Moon Bay. So definitely we need to be watching Lens tonight as well. He is well positioned to do well. Now top 4 is Teoro. He's now sitting in P5. He's racing the Ferrari tonight, as is his compatriot and teammate Funniest Cowboy. They're on 196 and 200 points respectively. Teovo has had a top 3 finish in race 2, which was run in the Group 1 prototypes. And then Funniest Cowboy, let me go and find him. Oh, there he is. Funniest Cowboy has 2 top 2 finishes in race number 2 and race number 4. But his other 2 results are quite disappointing. It's 12th and 11th. So Funniest Cowboy has had a very up and down season so far, but potentially a very distant challenger, maybe even for the championship, but certainly for P2. Sitting currently in P2 in the championship is Cartman from GT Ukraine, 3 times on the podium with 2 second places and 1 third. It seems like the championship is going away from Cartman, because in P1 in the standings, undisputedly, is JiiRabbit. 4 wins in a row this season, 7 wins in a row if you count the ones he had last season. This man is on a roll. You can't say that he's had his wins easily. They have come at a price through struggles and fights, but still JiiRabbit hangs on, and out of the 6 results that will contribute to his final tally, he's already got 4 wins. So forgive me, but I think you will understand how it's difficult for me to see how JiiRabbit is going to lose the championship this season. Anyway, so that is the rundown. JiiRabbit is on 412 points. Cartman is on 268. Funniest Cowboy is on 200. That is your top 3 in the championship as is. All races included. I'm not dropping any rounds. And just as I complete my rundown, Gadget is approaching the start-finish line. So let's go on board with Gadget around a lap of Saint Croix. layout C reverse. It's a pretty long start-finish straight, and the first corner is going to be a right-hander. He drops down the gears to fourth, takes a lot of that curb on the entry. Very nice exit from Gadget. He used all the width of the track. Now up the gears a little bit before this kind of tricky left-hander. It's a long one, and you need to keep the car under control. The rear engine cars are going to struggle a little bit through here. Now a fast section. He drops down one gear just to feed it through what will be corner number 4, and now we're barreling down these country roads. I imagine this is the French countryside, as Gadget kind of loses control for a little while but gathers it up. Now a hairpin coming up ahead of a long straight. This is important. Gadget brakes in a straight line, goes down into third. He's trying to put down the gas as soon as he can, and that was a good exit from the hairpin. Now the long straight line approaches, and as opposed to the main start-finish line, I think this is going to be the main overtaking opportunity. Just the sheer duration of slipstream that you can get on this straight is going to be very important. So if you can get within that 6-5 tenths from the car ahead, you will be in a good position to make the overtake. Now coming up next is this long left-hander up the hill, kind of blindsided as you enter it, but Gadget navigates it very well, feeds it out to the outside, and now a 90-degree turn coming up to the right. He brakes early up the hill, feeds it in, kind of misses the apex a little bit, but it's a good exit onto the bridge. Wow, so that's about half of the lap done, but still a very tricky technical session to go. And if you pay attention to the condition of Gadget's tires, they're not brilliant anymore, so this is going to be challenging. He brakes early, what feels like a very early braking point for Gadget, but he prioritizes the exit out of that left-hander. Now a combination of corners, and probably the most tricky technical section of the track coming up now. He brakes early again, down to third, misses the apex a little bit, but it's a wide track, so it doesn't really hurt him all that much. He's sticking to the left here as we approach a series of 90-degree right-handers. Here's the first one. That's apex missed, I'm afraid, my friend. Here comes another one. Better this time, certainly better this time from Gadget. He sticks it on the inside. Now just a couple of corners, well, still quite a few corners actually to go until the end, and coming up is this left-hander. He brakes way ahead of the 50 board. He tries to approach, get as close as he can to the barrier on the left, and then a long left-hander followed by a very tricky right-hander here. Spot your braking point, and that's away from the apex as well, so not the most perfect lap from Gadget, as he still has 2 corners to navigate. The left-hander, another straight, and then one more left-hander ahead of the finish line. This is a very long lap, as I told you. We're in the 4th minute now, and Gadget is still going. The whole session is 15 minutes long, so our drivers are going to have 2 attempts each, tops, I think, as Gadget hits his braking point at 100 meters ahead of the corner, very nicely hooks it up on the apex, and is just one kink to the right to go before he crosses the line. And that is your lap of St. Croix layout C reverse. I really got tired commentating on that. Let's see what Gadget posts. It's a 347.2 from him. Teovo and Cartman seem to be very close, and I imagine this should be quite suboptimal for them, as Teovo dives into the pits. Probably not a good lap from him. Cartman posts a 343, Teovo in the pits. Vlive comes up to the line. It's a 347 for him, as Flapjack promotes himself to P2, just 3 seconds behind. Who else is crossing the line? Lenz is coming up to the line now. It's a 346 for him. Puts himself up into P2. I was wrong. Flapjack is 3 seconds and not 3/10 behind Cartman. Is anyone else trying to post a lap time? Luco obviously isn't. Mark GT behind him. Something seems to have wrong for Mark GT, because he's only rocking up to the main straight now, and he's already in the 340s. But he carries on. He wants to finish the lap. Luco finishes it on a 346, and Mark posts a 348 Volksbachus behind them in the NSX. Oh, he's still got quite a while to go. What about Teovo? Teovo is out on fresh softs, as is Funniest Cowboy. So we seem to have several schools of thought represented here, with the Finlanders boys choosing to just do a burner lap, burn some fuel on that first attempt, change over to the softs, and then go for their final attempts. Right, so I understand that it's Volksbachus who's the only person even remotely close, that's a funny little combination, to completing a fast lap. He still has just under a minute to go until he posts his time, but let's join him, as no one else is on a proper flying lap at the moment. Everyone is at the very beginning of the lap. I know there was a briefing for the drivers ahead of this race that they really have to be mindful about leaving space for each other as they go for their qualifying runs, but as you see, looking at the map in the top right, still the drivers are sticking pretty close to each other and probably impeding a little bit. It's a 3:44.9 for Volksbachus, and he's just over a second behind Cartman. So after the first attempt's completed, it's Cartman from Volksbachus, from Luco, from Lenz, from Flapjack, and P5 is losing more than 3 seconds to provisional pole. That is how long this track is and how difficult it is to hook up a lap. I've heard the drivers discussing that even without making any obvious mistakes and just missing an apex or two here and there, you can easily find yourself 2 seconds slower than someone who's really hooked up a lap. So Flapjack has actually done a reasonable job, probably, with being just 3 seconds behind Cartman. Cartman's on an out lap. Vox is technically on a flyer, but he's just completed his first lap, so I'm not sure whether he'll be pushing at the moment. Luco is on an out lap, Lenz is on an out lap, Flapjack is, and so is Gadget. Vlive is on what seems to be either an in-lap or... yeah, this is his in-lap. This is the third lap he's doing in a row, so no point following him. So is Mark. What about Teovo? Teovo and Funniest Cowboy are on out laps, so technically there isn't even anyone that we should be following. Perhaps GTO, this is his second lap of the session, so potentially a flyer for him. We can join him, but this doesn't seem to be a great lap time from him. He crosses the final split with a 3:20, and he would need to get to the finish line in something like 25 to 30 seconds to be in the same vicinity as the other drivers, as he misses his apex a little bit and exits wide. Let's see if GTO will be diving into the pits or carrying on. 3 minutes remain in this qualifying session, so he actually needs to carry on. If he pits now, he wouldn't post any time. And there he goes. GTO comes in with a 3:50 flat to take P9. So Teovo and Funniest Cowboy are starting their laps now, as is JiiRabbit. He's still completing the outlap. And this is interesting. I wonder if the Finns are going to find more speed than Cartman and deprive him of a pole position. Cartman took pole last time when we were racing in the Group 4 cars, so he's the hot favorite to take it this time as well. For those of you who are joining us perhaps the first time, as Funniest Cowboy is bringing in an improvement, just to remind you, this is a multi-class championship, so we've already done one race in each of the 4 groups of car, Group 1, 2, 3, and 4, and now we're going for a second round, starting with the Group 4s. So the machinery is by now, hopefully, very familiar to the drivers. They've done a lot of laps, a lot of mileage in these cars, so we should be seeing them extract proper, good performance. Funniest Cowboy is on his way to posting a quick lap, and he was up. He continues being up by 6/10 now on provisional pole, so this is potentially a lap that will put him in P1. What is Cartman doing? Cartman is also finding an improvement, not as much as the Finn behind him, but this is going to be close, and Cartman is ahead on track, so we can stay with him for a little while and see how the action unfolds. The next split is still a while away. This is a long track. The splits are far away from each other. This looks pretty good for Cartman so far. Let's join him on board. Is it cleaner? This is where Gadget had mistakes on the lap where we followed him, but Cartman feeds it in quite nicely. I would still say he missed the apex a little bit, but nothing too critical, as it feels that the Huracan just has a bit of a more responsive front end. It turns in that bit better, and he's up by more than half a second. What is Funniest Cowboy behind him doing? He's approaching the same split right now. Is it going to be the same? Is it going to be more for Funniest Cowboy? More than half a second of an improvement for Cartman. What is Funniest Cowboy doing? Let's see the difference on screen right now. But it's his first lap, so it won't tell us, unfortunately. That is quite silly from Gran Turismo, and I don't remember the exact split time for Cartman to make the comparison. Let's go back to him and look at what he posts in the next measuring zone. It's a 3:14.8 for him. He's bringing in now 6/10 of an improvement. What is Funniest Cowboy behind him doing? So a 3:14.8, a high 3:14 is Cartman's time. What about Cowboy in the Ferrari? Gadget improves to a 3:46, but Cowboy seems to have lost a lot of time because he's on a 3:16. What about Teovo behind him? I missed the split, and JiiRabbit has been a dark horse all this time, so we don't know how he's doing. Cartman improves to a 3:43.1. Flapjack is now up to P6 with a 3:46, and these are the last laps that our drivers are completing. Vlive doesn't find much of an improvement. Funniest Cowboy promotes himself to P2, but he's almost 1.5 seconds behind. Teovo is now in P4, so that's a big improvement for him. Anyone else crossing the line? Yes, Lenz crosses the line and promotes himself to P4, relegates Teovo to P5. But the big question is, what is JiiRabbit doing? Will the championship leader find extra time, or will he have to concede P1 to Cartman on a track where it's relatively easy to overtake? So it's not like qualifying is incredibly important, but still, psychologically, JiiRabbit would want to beat Cartman, but it isn't enough. He's P3, so second row on the grid for JiiRabbit as a result of that qualifying session. Cartman is on pole, and he's joined by Funniest Cowboy. I have to think, is this the first time that JiiRabbit isn't on the first row of the grid, or have we seen this before? Let me know in the comments, perhaps, if you have a better memory than your commentator. Has JiiRabbit ever been lower than the first row this season? Good performance from Cartman. He shows his strength. It's a 1.3 second gap between him and Funniest Cowboy in qualifying. That's a commanding performance, a commanding advantage from Cartman, so he sets himself up very nicely. I haven't mentioned this before, but I firmly believe that if Cartman has any hope of fighting for the title this season, he needs to be winning today's race, and probably every single race to come after that as well. So pressure on him, no pressure at all, but I hope, for Ukraine's sake as well, that Cartman can do well in the race tonight. Right, we are waiting for the timer to run down, and there it is. Qualifying is over. and we can have a quick look at the results. Cartman in his Huracan is on pole, bagging the extra 4 points for that performance. Funniest Cowboy joins him on row 1. They're followed by JiiRabbit and Vox Bacchus. Then it's Lens and Teovo on row 3. Luco and Gadget are 7th and 8th. Flapjack and Vlive are 9th and 10th. And Mark GT and GTO 250 round out our 12-car grid for tonight. It's time to talk strategy, I think. Strategy-wise, I've heard, as we have the command that it's 3 minutes until race start, I've heard that the Alfas are probably going to be able to do a one-stop. The Alfa Romeo is notoriously good on its tires, so a medium or even a medium soft is possible. We have no requirement for any mandatory tire compounds or tire combinations, so everyone is free to do whatever they want. The other cars might need to think about 2 stops, medium, soft, perhaps. So we're going to see varied strategy in the race tonight, and ultimately it's going to depend on that. It's going to depend on pace. It's going to depend on traffic. We have an exciting race ahead of us, 60 minutes of nail-biting action, I have no doubt. So go grab your beverage of preference, go grab a good snack, make yourself comfortable. We're going to be here for another hour. Yeah, indeed, AG27. That was a commanding qualifying performance from Cartman. He's really finally bringing the sort of performances that I personally was expecting from him. He had a good and strong race 1 fighting with JiiRabbit, even though it was a little artificial because of the difference in strategy. But then through various circumstances and combinations, JiiRabbit has always had the upper hand. This is perhaps the first race where it genuinely feels, at least based on qualifying, that JiiRabbit can be dethroned, and Cartman stands to perhaps bag his 15th race win in ADEC, the S1 Design Endurance Championship. I'm going to use this opportunity to tell all of you, to remind all of you, of course, to drop a like to this broadcast, subscribe to GT Ukraine if you're new. Most of our content, of course, is in Ukrainian, but we bring you these broadcasts every fortnight in English from the S1 Design Endurance Championship. And hey, who knows? Learning languages is good for you, so you might want to be brushing up on that Ukrainian. We've got the command from Gadget, the session host, that the race will be starting soon. 16 laps this time, as opposed to the usual 60-minute timer. This is to make sure that everyone gets to cross the line. Most importantly, the leaders get to cross the line, and we don't have the weird situation when someone in the midfield finishes first and the others don't get to complete their final lap. That's it. We're being teleported onto the grid. We are setting up the broadcast. Well, there we go. And it's Cartman from Funniest Cowboy, from JiiRabbit, from Vox Bacchus on the grid. We are positioned very well to see all the action, and the lights are coming on. 3, 2, 1. And it's lights out and away we go. JiiRabbit gets the better launch, of course, in his Alfa. The Alfa pulls off the start, and forget about qualifying results. Cartman is now side by side with Funniest Cowboy for P2. Cartman is on the inside. Will he be able to defend the position? They go side by side, and he has to leave space for Funniest Cowboy. It's all very polite between the two, and the Finn takes the spot, so Cartman loses 2 positions from the start, and he's now followed by his teammate Lens. Behind them, Luco has a bit of an off-track moment, and Teovo is able to capitalize on that. He's in P6. Luco is 7th. The 2 motion blur orange boys are now in P8 and P9. GTO is 10th, and Flapjack and Mark GT might have had some sort of incident, and they're already almost 2 seconds behind GTO in 10th. Let's go back to the leaders. JiiRabbit is solidifying his position immediately, 1.3, 1.2 seconds away from Funniest Cowboy, and then it's very tight behind them. There's action as Theovo pulls out of the slipstream. He's in P8. Volkswagen concedes, or I think Volkswagen was rather attacking, because Theovo was P6. He has passed Volkswagen for position out as they drive out onto the long straight for the first time. But here comes that slipstream. Vox pulls out. He's on the inside now. He's going to be challenging Theovo into the corner. Theovo is defenseless in that sense. He has to let Volkswagen have the space on the inside. But can the Ferrari pull enough to put Theovo in a good position? He'll be on the inside for the next right-hander, and there you have it. Volkswagen doesn't really put that much of a fight up as Theovo immediately propels himself pretty close to Lenz and can try and challenge him for position. So that was quite an exciting first half of lap 1. Now I feel that the race has sort of settled down a little bit, but just as I say that, Flapjack dives up the inside of GTO. That was a bit of an ambitious move, if you ask me. He stays in this position, but for how long? He's very close to GTO, and we go on board with Flapjack. We can actually probably view this better from on board with Mark GT, who's now 12th. Yeah, very close following from Flapjack, and it feels quite inevitable that he's going to get GTO sooner or later. GTO is being a little bit defensive, but you can't play with that too much here, because compromising your lines will just make you that much slower. A good fight for P11, for P10 actually, and I feel Flapjack had the better exit there. The Alfa doesn't pull exactly as much as the Lamborghini does, and it's a good move for Flapjack. Down the inside he goes for P10. Will GTO try to counter? Nah, I would think that the best course of action, as GTO, it looked like an aggressive move from him, but he stays put in 11th, and it's now Mark GT who's actually challenging him. Mark is on the outside, and for right now, the game is classifying him as being ahead. Yes, he pulls around GTO for P1. Oh, sorry, P11. P1, sure, getting a little ahead of myself. But now let's go back to P1. JiiRabbit, the current championship leader, is holding on to the lead. Funniest Cowboy is close nearby, and we have a moment to consider tires. It's mediums for the leader, mediums for the Ferrari of Funniest Cowboy, mediums for Cartman. And look at that, such a commanding performance in qualifying, but a very sizable gap now between Cartman and Funniest Cowboy. Perhaps Cartman is thinking about tire preservation starting from lap 1, as behind it seems that Lenz has made a mistake somewhere, and he's now down 2 positions. He ceded them both to Theovo and Volkswagen. I can have a look at the tires here as well, and it's mediums, mediums, mediums all around. I think the entire field has started on mediums, haven't they? No, it's Mark GT who's on softs and GTO is on medium. So Mark is the only person choosing to go aggressive, and with the softer tire compound right off the start, he probably feels he needs to come up with something creative starting from the back of the field. Back to the leaders, and it's Funniest Cowboy pressuring JiiRabbit. 7/10 is the gap between them. Let's go on board with Funniest Cowboy. That's what it looks like to him, and that is how quickly you can negate the gap in the slipstream. So 7/10 when it started, and he'll be probably down to something like 4/10, maybe even 3/10 by the end of this long straight. Yeah, it's 2.5/10 for Funniest Cowboy as he hits his brakes. So I get the impression initially that Cartman is thinking about tire preservation. It can't be that he doesn't have the pace. I think he is choosing not to demonstrate his pace for whatever reason. Maybe he needs to, maybe it's just a cunning little strategic choice. JiiRabbit, should feel pretty comfortable. The Alfas are known for great tire management, and he has a bit of a wobble going through that corner following the bridge. So his tires are looking great. You can already start seeing the slight difference in tire wear between JiiRabbit and Funniest Cowboy, and I'm wondering, is Cowboy planning to do more pit stops than JiiRabbit? And then obviously he needs to make the move as quickly as possible. Let's go on board. JiiRabbit isn't particularly defending, he's just driving the normal line, and yeah, I feel Cowboy has a lot more pace. When someone's following this close, then you have to assume that they have more pace than the car in front. Obviously, fastest laps all around, as this is just lap number 2 of the race. I see the question, is there a chance to finish the finish domination? Well, it ain't looking like that, mate. Right now we've got 2 Finns on in the top 2 positions. Teovo is in P4 close by, and Cartman is all alone trying to fight the Finns. But let's see whether the Alfa is going to be as good on its tires as we have come to expect, as Lenz is just dropping down the order. He has ceded the position to Luco, but we know that Luco's Bugatti is terrible on its tires. I mean, look at the difference. That's what his tires look like, and that's what Lenz's tires look like. So they've barely finished 2 laps, and the Bugatti has already eaten up noticeably more of its mediums. So Luco will be doing more pit stops than Lenz for sure. So in that sense, Lenz doesn't need to be too concerned with the fact that he has lost track position. Back to our leaders, JiiRabbit versus Funniest Cowboy, and the situation is similar here. Funniest Cowboy's tires are burning up quicker than JiiRabbit's, so he might be under pressure to do a 2-stop, maybe? I'm just putting it out there. I don't know what the base number of pit stops is. Probably 1, potentially for JiiRabbit, and then 2 for Funniest Cowboy. Fingers crossed, indeed. Yes, Cartman scored a pole, and it looked like a very dominant performance from him in qualifying, but off the start, the Alfa is just insane. The Ferrari is also pretty good, and Cartman's Huracan just lost him the start, I feel. Cartman will probably tell us that he wasn't hoping to be leading by turn 1, as I heard tires screeching, but no, everything seems to be just fine out of the corner onto the long straight. Mark GT is now 10th, so he's found a way past Flapjack on his softs, and this gives you an idea of just how quickly the softs go away in this race. Lap 3, we're just in the middle of lap 3, and on Flapjack's car, that compound isn't looking all that fresh anymore. It's looking pretty static between the top 3 at the moment, as they are just eking out their advantage over Teovo in P4. He's only 2 seconds behind, so it isn't too significant. I would still consider him part of the leading group, but maybe the top 3 just have that tiny bit of overpace. Vox Bacchus is doing very well in P5. For Vox, his previous best results were 2 top 4s, so he's very close to repeating that. Potentially could have a fight with Teovo. I believe the Ferrari is a little worse on its tires than the Honda, although at this specific point in time there seems to be no difference between the two. But it might still come to him, as it might come to all the Alfa drivers. Gadget, Lenz in front of him, and then Vlive, Team Motion Blur, Orange going for identical cars. These guys are probably going long and probably doing fewer pit stops, so it could be a good race to them, and it could pan out in their favor as we progress. 10 minutes down in this race. We're approaching the end of lap 3 out of 16, so still a very long time to go, still a lot of laps to complete, a lot of mileage to cover. For now, our top 3 are locked in. It's JiiRabbit from Funniest Cowboy from Cartman. Something seems to have happened to GTO, who's now seriously far behind. More than almost 9 seconds separate him from Flapjack, as he really didn't have a good final corner there. So an unfortunate turn of events from GTO, but at least no damage on his car, so he can still hope to claw his way back into this race. Fastest lap is now with Cartman, but looking at the pace, they're all very close. It's within a couple of tenths. It's 45.7 for JiiRabbit, a 45.8 for Cowboy, and then a 45.4 for Cartman, who probably, he might have had like the strongest slipstream on the long straight, so it might be down to that. I'm more interested in tires and fuel. So for JiiRabbit, the tires are looking pretty good. For Funniest Cowboy, they're a little bit worse. It's the front right that is in the worst condition out of the 4 tires, and it's about 30% down on its useful life. For Cartman, there's literally millimeters of difference, but actually I think his rears are doing a little worse than those 4 Funniest Cowboy. I get the impression that right now these top 3 are playing a strategy game. It's important for them to preserve the fuel. By the way, how are you doing on fuel? JiiRabbit has burned a little bit more than the 2 chasing him. So they probably have an idea of how far they want to take this set of tires. Half distance as Cartman makes a mistake and he flicks the barrier. He touches the barrier a little bit. Thankfully for him, no damage, but that immediately puts him further away from Funniest Cowboy. He's now 1.5, 1.6 seconds away, and this takes the slipstream away from him on the long straight, so not good news for Cartman there, but he keeps himself in the race at least. It all could have been a lot worse. So half distance is 8 laps. We have not even completed 4 just yet, and on this sort of tire consumption rate, JiiRabbit can probably easily take it to lap 8. Can Funniest Cowboy do it? It won't be comfortable on the last lap. Same for Cartman, same for Terror, same for Vox Bacchus. He's probably doing the best out of the non-alphas in the top 5, and I'm scared of looking at Luco's tires. Well, not too bad, actually. You have to give it to Luco. Even he can probably potentially, on the last on the last pixels of that indicator, he can probably get this set to the end of lap 8 as well. And then Lenz, he's fine. I mean, Lenz's tires look super crisp, super sharp. I'm thinking he can take this to lap 10 and not notice, and then probably go into the softs. So definitely a viable strategy for the alphas. And pretty much the same for Gadget, Live. Mark is going to need to pit soon. And Mark is a good indicator for whoever is thinking about a final stint on softs. Of course, he started on a full tank of fuel, so if you do the soft stint at the end, the car is going to be lighter and tire wear is going to be easier. But 4 laps is what Mark seems to have been able to master, not more. I assume this is going to be box for Mark GT, and he will become the first person to make a pit stop in this race. That's right, he peels off into the pits. 71% of fuel left in the tank for him, and let's see what it's going to be. We can stay with Mark GT and enjoy the wonderful pit stop animations of Gran Turismo 7. Fresh tires on, and no fuel. It's mediums, and I seriously doubt these are mediums till the end. So confirmed, Mark is on a 2-stop at least. Let's go back to our leaders, and the gaps seem to have grown. JiiRabbit is now 1.5 seconds away from Funniest Cowboy. Cartman is another 1.2 away from the Finn in front of him. So JiiRabbit seems to be in the hot seat. Great situation for him. He's doing well on tires, perhaps a little bit worse on fuel, but will that make a difference? I'm not sure. We'll just have to wait and see. Teovo is in P4, pretty confidently. Voxbacchus is in 5th, he isn't being challenged, while Lenz has found his way past Luco, whose tires are now very noticeably beginning to fade away. That front right is only at 30% of useful life left. So Luco should be starting to think about a pit stop sometime soon, and Lenz has already found a way past him on his much fresher mediums. The field is staying remarkably close. We are now almost 20 minutes into the race, and P6 is separated from P1 by just 13 seconds. I think this is one of the closest we've seen the field stay so deep into the race, as Lenz makes a mistake. Oh my god, he's totally out of control there. He manages to gather it up, but Luco passes him, and ahead, someone has made a mistake. It's Funniest Cowboy. He is facing the wrong way, partially. He's now down to P5. Let's see if that's where he stays. And he's got damage. He has damaged the rear of the car. Let's view a replay, and hopefully we'll be able to catch this moment. So Cowboy was in P2, and he puts a wheel onto the grass, and it spirals out of control for him. He does a full... Oh no, he was on his way to do a full 360, but there was a barrier in the way, and that's what he makes contact with, and that's how he gets his damage. So Cowboy is now down to P5, and this is a significant development for the race. That's him effectively out of the fight for the lead. It's just JiiRabbit against Cartman now, without Funniest Cowboy to be the third participant of that little situation. And I wonder if Cowboy will jump into the pits straight away. This has forced me to override the saved frame I had for Lenz's little incident. I surmised that it was just him losing control of the mid-engine Alfa. The mid-engine cars in Gran Turismo, at least, are pretty tricky to drive, and on worn tires, as we've seen from Funniest Cowboy, the rear tends to step out a little bit, and probably that's what hurt Lenz in that little moment. So Cartman is now in P2. He inherited it from Funniest Cowboy, who does pit at the end of lap 5. Yes, that's lap 5 for Funniest Cowboy, and it's an early pit stop. I feel this might condemn him to some sort of 2-stop strategy. Oh, a bit of a refueling for Funniest Cowboy, so maybe not. What if he's going on to the hards? Don't tell me he's going on to the hards. He's onto the hards. Oh my god. Funniest Cowboy has taken on the hardest compound of tire available, and I've heard it from the drivers that the hards can be something like 2 seconds a lap slower. So Funniest Cowboy will be forced to pay a big price for that mistake. He can make it to the end now on the hards, but he won't be quick, so don't expect him to make it onto the podium. as Flapjack is now actively pressuring him for what is currently P11. Let's go on board with Flapjack as he puts a couple of tires on the grass and loses momentum, but keeps it under control. The tires are still fresh, so in that sense, he's helped by his compound of tires, but not a great moment for Flapjack. He needs to gather it up now. We will be able to watch this fight a little bit later. What's happening elsewhere? So JiiRabbit's in the lead. Cartman is now 3.5 seconds behind. Teovo is now 5 seconds behind, and it seems that on these worn tires, the difference in pace is becoming more evident as JiiRabbit on his fresher mediums is able to keep it under control, but the others are having to sacrifice a bit of pace for the sake of control. Luco, I mean, to me, he seems set to pit at the end of this lap. I mean, this is unreasonable now. Just maybe 15 seconds of, say 15% of useful life left in his front right, and then maybe 20% in the rear right. And you can just see, let's go on board with Lens, you can see how Lens is reducing the arrears every single corner. Look at that. Luco has to brake right on the apex mid-corner just to keep it under control, and Luco is struggling. You can tell by the body language of that Bugatti that it is not a pleasant car to drive at the moment. I wonder if Lens will be in a hurry to try and make an overtake to force the issue, and he's right on the rear bumper now of Luco. This is about to happen. Surely in the next corner Lens will think about it, but no, he's being patient. He understands that Luco is on the verge of pitting. He's forced to go on the outside, is Lens. No rush. It seems they're pretty far away from the cars ahead. Volksbacchus is almost 8 seconds ahead of Luco, so Lens probably realizes that his fight is for something like top 5, which would be a good result for Lens. He's had consecutive top 5s in the first 2 races, so a third top 5 perhaps incoming for Lens from this race. Will Luco pit? Let's have a look. I mean, surely he has to. And he does. Luco is in the pits. He gets rid of the mediums. That's end of lap 6. Still 10 laps to go. So I would imagine another set of mediums and then something until the end. That would look like a reasonable strategy for Luco. No fuel for Luco, and it is another set of mediums, so he's probably now committed to a 2-stop. Where does he emerge? He's in P8, ahead of Mark GT, ahead of Funniest Cowboy, who still remains in P10, so Flapjack has not found a way past him, and he is slowly creeping up to Mark GT. I'm reminding you that Mark was the only driver to start on the softs from the back of the field. He's already completed his pit stop onto the mediums, probably on a 2-stop strategy, while Funniest Cowboy seems to be on a 1-stop, but it just goes to show how much Funniest Cowboy has lost. He is in a fight now, albeit temporary, with Mark GT. So that was a very significant incident for Funniest Cowboy. Let's go back to our leaders. Almost 5 seconds now between JiiRabbit and Cartman, and the difference in tire wear is evident. JiiRabbit is easily taking it to the end of lap 8, while for Cartman, I'm not even sure what's the point of him pitting now if he's made it so far into the race. On the other hand, that final lap 8, on this sort of tire wear is going to be quite the nightmare. So let's see what Cartman does. It's his decision to make, thankfully, not ours. Let me know in the chat, guys, who are you rooting for? Grand Tourist, I get the impression that you don't mind as long as one of the Finns don't win. AG27, who's your favorite for this race? Who are you rooting for? And don't forget to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't yet. We're approaching the end of the first stint, obviously, for those who haven't pit yet. And it's Gadget now in P6, inheriting positions from everyone who has made their pit stops. And the Alphas are thriving in these sorts of conditions at this late stage in the race. No, they don't need to change tire compound. Medium is fine under ADEC regulations, Grand Tourist. And AG says he wants to root for Cartman for all time's sake, but damn, JiiRabbit is flying. Indeed, JiiRabbit is just untouchable. So, you know, at moments it has felt in previous races like, here comes someone who's going to challenge JiiRabbit. Here comes someone to finally dethrone the champion. But in the end, JiiRabbit always pulls through, and as this race progresses, I'm getting the impression that that is what we are bearing witness to. What's Cartman gonna do in terms of pits? Does he pit? No, he carries on, and this is going to be a difficult lap for Cartman on no more than 25% on either tire, and the rear right just screaming death. He's going to be leaking time to JiiRabbit, and with that decision, I feel that unless JiiRabbit makes a dramatic mistake somewhere, turns around, puts it into the barrier, we're on course for another JiiRabbit win and Cartman P2. But it's still a long race. There's still a lot of time to go. We're only just about 27 minutes into the race. We're on lap 8 out of 16. So, still a lot to happen. Oh, Grand Tourist, do you think the Alphas will definitely go onto the softs? Well, it is possible. It is possible. I mean, JiiRabbit can easily do another 2 laps after this one, and then 6 on the softs. That doesn't sound impossible. So, yeah, and with that, of course, it's GG. Cartman will be confined to 2 stints on the mediums, and it's a valiant effort from Cartman, but it feels like it's going away from him once again. Have we got any on-track fights happening at the moment? I feel the most intense thing is happening here. It's Funniest Cowboy has found a way past Mark GT on his hards. We haven't seen the overtake, but he's now ahead in this little group. Mark is on mediums, and he's yet to pit. Flapjack is on mediums, and he probably needs to pit as well. One more thing we need to monitor is where Funniest Cowboy will end up once the cars ahead of him make their pit stops. I mean, he is cleanly behind Luco for the time being, but Luco will need to pit again. And then everyone else ahead of him has not made a pit stop just yet, but I feel we are set to see one from Cartman, Teovo, Vox. They're all on very worn mediums at this point in the race, so I think these 3 will be pitting at the end of lap 8, while JiiRabbit, Lens, Gadget, and Vlive in their non-tire eating Alphas can probably stay out for a little longer, and yeah, try to aim for a soft run at the end. What a lot of difference there can be between a qualifying session and the race. Cartman seemed to be totally in control. I mean, 1.3 seconds in front of the nearest competitor, and that nearest competitor wasn't even JiiRabbit, it was Funniest Cowboy. But then the start made all the difference, and ever since he's taken the lead, JiiRabbit has never looked back. So that's the story of the race so far, at least when it comes to the fight for the win. And JiiRabbit pits. Okay, so Grand Tourist, we were wrong. JiiRabbit pits at the end of lap 8. I don't think he'll be taking the softs out for 8 laps, so he, for whatever reason, chooses to go for the same strategy as the cars that consume more, and so does Lenz. So no one seems to be going for the softs at the end. Cartman had a bit more fuel in his car, and he fuels up less, compensating a bit for a bit of the gap that they had. It's now 4 seconds between them as Luco storms past Teoro, putting himself in P3. Luco is obviously not concerned all that much with tire wear and tire conservation. He can just push as Teoro drifts through the corner, but gets it under control. And Funniest Cowboy, who's on a 1-stop, after the pits have shaken out, promotes himself into P6. I'm not sure if promotes is the right word, because he was in P2 earlier in the race, but an unfortunate incident and contact with the wall have meant that he had to pit for repairs and put on the hards to make a 1-stop possible. Yeah, so it's 4 seconds now between JiiRabbit and Cartman. Cartman has a little less fuel in the tank. Luco is up to P3, but this is a little artificial because we suspect that Luco still needs to pit. So Teoro is in... Oh yeah, Luco certainly needs to pit also for fuel. You can see the difference between him and Teoro. Teoro's got about half a tank of fuel, while Luco's is closer to about 30%. Classic Ferrari strategy, says Grand Tourist. Well, it's an Alfa Romeo, so same country, but kind of different manufacturers. But I'm seeing what you're getting at there. Still, JiiRabbit can afford it. It's not like he's slower than Cartman on the mediums, so why not? Maybe he wants to give himself the comfort of not having to drive on very worn mediums. He's set to win this anyway. Yeah, so Teoro is in net P3, then it's Vox Bacchus, seems set to grab a P4. Funniest Cowboy doesn't need to concern himself with tire preservation, he's just pushing on the hards. Cartman's tires dying of death. Yes, if I'm trying to imitate the intonations as well, it's dying of death. And nobody has been sent to the Shadow Realm, at least tonight. But hey, still a lot of mileage to go, as the sun seems to be setting a little bit on the track. It's getting a little bit darker out there. Oh, 0.5 second penalty for Luco, probably for disrespecting the track limits, and it's probably going to resolve this little battle with Teoro way before Luco needs to pit. Penalty zone coming right up. We can go on board with Teoro and have a look at how this move, quote-unquote, is going to be done. Luco moves off the racing line as a good sportsman-like racer should. He stays on the inside. It's going to be a little awkward because Luco is there on the inside, but Teoro manages to pull past him way before even before the braking zone, and then Luco sees no point really in fighting this particularly hard. Teoro is cleanly passed for P3. what's happening there at the tail end of the field? Lenz has pit, and he is weirdly low down the order. He's in P9. Oh, Flapjack ahead of him will be pitting. He's pressuring Mark. Mark will be pitting as well. So that's 2 positions for Lenz. And then maybe Luco as well, right? Is set to lose his position. But this is going to be tricky between Luco and Lenz, actually. I'm not sure of quite what the gap between the two of them is. So Lenz, not exactly too strongly positioned for a great finish, but who knows, maybe the commentator is just having a bad one. Gadget is now down to 10th together with Vlive, so it's just the Alfa boys doing their long strategies of one pit stop, but they're all going to be promoted a little bit higher once the strategies play out. Lenz is already looking forward to iRacing next season. Yeah, this is a real issue for the Ukrainian Gran Turismo community. Everyone is starting to explore alternative simulators. We've got people doing Assetto Corsa, we've got people doing iRacing, and no one seems to want to do Gran Turismo anymore, except for Cartman and a few other enthusiasts. I feel we're losing that unique blend of talent that we had when we did our Tier 1 races. Cartman, by the way, is pushing. He's putting down the fastest lap in the race so far, and he's reduced the gap from around 4 seconds to 3.3. If I were JiiRabbit, I wouldn't be panicking just yet. If the guy wants to burn his tires, of course, let him do so. But Cartman, obviously not taking this lying down. He's trying to at least bag the extra 4 points for the fastest lap and do some damage limitation, minimize the loss to JiiRabbit. Just to remind you all, JiiRabbit already has 4 wins this season under his belt. If he wins this one and has 5 out of the 6 final results, I don't see how he's losing the championship. He can probably, well, I'm not going to go as far as to say he can afford to miss all the races until the end of this season, but he's close to that. He can afford top 5s from here on in, and he would still be champion by the end of the season. That's how dominant JiiRabbit has been, and that's how short the season is. I mean, 8 races, 6 making up the final tally. I've got the appetite for more. The commentator is asking for more. For those of you who are wondering what's going to happen next, by the way, this is season 1 of ADEC this year, and the calendar year has 3 seasons of 8 races each. So after a break, we will be back with season 2, and we'll see all the same faces. We'll see promotions and relegations, because in the background there's also Tier 2 running with a spicy little championship fight over there. Our current promoted Tier 2 champion is Funniest Cowboy, and he was putting pressure on the reigning Tier 1 champion until that unfortunate incident. Yeah, I'm seeing the comments in the chat. Cartman is catching. He has improved the fastest lap. It was a 44.7 against a 45.1 for JiiRabbit. So he's taken out 4/10 as our 2 stoppers are pitting now. Mark and Flapjack are pitting at the end of lap 10. It's a good logical place for another stint on the mediums. So, yeah, Cartman probably hoping to create a bit of pressure on JiiRabbit, maybe put him off balance, force a mistake from 3 seconds behind. This track has places where a mistake would cost you way more than 3 seconds. So it's not over, of course, for Cartman, but on pure pace and unaided by mistakes, he will probably struggle to find a way past JiiRabbit and the challenge for the win. Flapjack and Mark pit, and they're out in P10 and P11. They will resume their little fight with Mark now behind. Let's see who gets that coveted top 10 finish at the end of the race. There's fighting ahead of them as well. As I look at the map, Gadget, no, this isn't a fight. This is just Gadget and Live running in formation for the entirety of the race, effectively. They've been together for as long as anytime I switch over to them, they're just running together. P8 and P9 for them. Lenz is ahead of them on the same strategy, now up to P7, and out of the cars ahead of him, it's only Luco that hasn't pit and is still yet to pit a second time. Let's go back to our leaders. 2.7 now the gap, and I wonder if Cartman is thinking that with the time progressing and with the track getting a little colder, tire wear for him is going to be better on the second stint, because he's obviously pushing harder, relying on the pace that the Huracan has. I mean, the Alfa is not known for one-lap pace. The Alfa is a good race car because it's consistent and it's great on its tires, but on clean pace, Cartman can be faster, and we've seen this in qualifying. And you know, this is commentator's instinct now, waking up. Could Cartman be planning to just rock up on JiiRabbit's rear bumper and be like, hey mate, time to see the track position, don't you think? So this is not over yet, and Cartman is trying to pull himself back into this race. 2 seconds now between the two of them, and he was on course for another fastest lap against JiiRabbit. What's Rabbit doing in terms of pace? Let's look at the split. In qualifying, this was a 3:14 kind of moment. Now it's 3:17 and 3:16 from Cartman. So it is no joke. He is taking a second out of JiiRabbit. Maybe not that much, but definitely over half a second, more than 5/10. So Cartman is putting the pressure on JiiRabbit. He's creating the perfect conditions for JiiRabbit to potentially make a little mistake somewhere, and that's all that Cartman needs. He doesn't need 3 seconds now. He needs just 2 as he crosses the line and takes the fastest lap. That's a 3:44.4 for Cartman against 3:45.4 for JiiRabbit. So no joke, that's a second taken out in 1 lap with still 5 laps to go. This is not over for Cartman, and he is pushing. How many laps has he done on these tires now? 3 full laps, because he pit at the end of lap 8. We've now completed lap 11, now on lap 12. So out of the 8 laps he needs to do, he's done 3. And the worst of his tires seems to have lost about 30% of its useful life. Now, tire wear in Gran Turismo becomes a little faster as it progresses. So if you kill your front right down to 70% in the first 3 laps, then the next 30% will be done in something like 2.5. But the reason I'm bringing this up is I'm thinking, is Cartman able to comfortably take these tires to the end? And you know what? I think he might be. He might just be. And if he gives himself track position over JiiRabbit by actually making a physical move, Rabbit might struggle a little bit. He might actually find it difficult to pull past Cartman. And what would be... Now, let's put our strategic thinking caps on now. We haven't got anything more interesting to do, but if you were Cartman, what part of the circuit would you want to make the move against JiiRabbit? And when would you want to make it? Last lap? If it's last lap, where would you do it? Long straight? Technical straight? Bridge? Right before the finishing line? It's interesting. I want to hear your thoughts. Yeah, if Cartman does catch up, there's little the Alfa can do to defend. Exactly, the Huracan has pace and has straight line speed. With the slipstream, Cartman is going to be effectively unstoppable. He's got 2 laps for a move, says Grand Tourist. After that, it will be difficult because of tire wear. Yeah, straight, obviously, in 2 laps. So, okay, guys, I'm not a betting... Apologies if that sounded weird to you. I just dropped the gamepad that I'm plugged into. So I'm not a betting man, and of course I'm not a bookmaker, but I see Grand Tourist. You're telling me it's a lap 14 move by Cartman against JiiRabbit on the long straight. Has anyone got any other ideas? Because I'm thinking that Cartman will be on JiiRabbit's rear bumper a little earlier than that, and if I were him, I wouldn't start playing with, you know, staying behind JiiRabbit, lifting off, although he's down on fuel, isn't he? Yeah, he didn't fuel up as much as JiiRabbit did, and of course, Cartman seems to be just generally a little more economical with his fuel, but he might need to fuel save a little bit. Does he want to pull up into the slipstream and then lift a little bit on the straight? Maybe use a lower fuel map. This is interesting, and there's a lot happening here in the fight for P1. Before it all gets very spicy, let's remind ourselves of what else is happening. Vox Bacchus is now ahead of Luco, whose tires are shot, and who will probably be thinking about pitting soon, but not now. Luco probably wants to do a final stint on the softs. Funniest Cowboy on the hards isn't doing particularly well. Look at those tires. He might need to think of another pit stop before the end of the race. Lenz is in P7, and he's just waiting. He's just waiting to be promoted by everyone, well, by Luco pitting in front, maybe Cowboy as well, and it's the same story for Gadget and Vive. They're just chilling here, waiting. Flapjack is ahead of Mark. They're both on the mediums, but it seems like Flapjack is on course to take P10, and then GTO is in a seriously distant P12 at the end of the pack. Main question of the race, as something seems to have happened to Cartman. He's now 2 seconds behind, and I'm just gonna roll it back a little bit. Did he make a mistake? Well, even if he did, it wasn't here. This looks clean for him, but he's now 2 seconds behind behind JiiRabbit. What are you telling me? Lap 13, Grand Tourist, you think is the time to overtake? Well, we're on lap 13, and it hasn't come. If not 13, then GG, you think? Well, come on, have some faith in Cartman. He can still surprise us, I think. His tires are now noticeably worse. You are right at pointing that out. And it does feel, I have to agree, that JiiRabbit might have kept him at enough of a distance to prevent an attack. Oh, it's here that Cartman really reels JiiRabbit in. Look at that. The gap went from 2 seconds to just 1.5. And in terms of pace, the previous lap was still good for Cartman. 3:44.6 against a fastest lap of 3:44.4. This is definitely still on in this technical section over here. He still has the advantage, but it's fair to say he won't have it for a very long time, because his tires are going away, and it would have been beneficial for him to be something like 0.7 seconds away, and not 1.7, 1.8, as is the case at the moment. Anyway, Cartman and JiiRabbit, of course, are gifting us a wonderful little fight that seems to be going down to the very last meters of the race. The gap is fluctuating, and Cartman cannot boast of confidently catching up with JiiRabbit anymore. On fuel, I would hazard a guess that Cartman is fine. It's just the tiniest bit that he's losing out to JiiRabbit, who was less economical in the first stint and fueled up more, so Cartman's probably done what he needed to do in terms of fuel saving. Now it's just about tire wear and making the move. It's less than 1.4 seconds at the finish now. JiiRabbit crosses the line for a 3:45.8. For Cartman, it's a 46.1, so that lap he was actually slower on aggregate than JiiRabbit. So it's a sign for me that the tires are going away now. Oh, look at this. We've got a juicy little fight going on. Lenz has rocked up to the back of Funniest Cowboy, so he might be making a move without waiting for Cowboy to pit, as Lenz goes into the pits and he's going to drop down the order, promoting Funniest Cowboy and Lenz. So it is a fight for P5 for Lenz after all. How are the leaders doing? This one, well, it's fluctuating. This is not the actual gap between them, and Cartman just seems to struggle out of the hairpin and onto the main straight. It was 1.2 when they were entering the corner, and now the gap is 2 seconds as they are driving down the main straight. No, Grand Tourist, it seems that Cartman is just that much unsure of his rear tires at this point in the race. He just can't put the power down the way JiiRabbit can, and it translates into a very poor exit out of a crucial traction zone onto the long straight. How is Lenz doing here? He's right behind Funniest Cowboy. He's firmly in the slipstream, helping the Alfa that doesn't have great straight line speed. Will he be close enough, and will he dare, or will he feel the need to, so many questions, to attack? And the answer is no. He stays put behind Funniest Cowboy, but there it is. Look at how much better the Alfa is than the mid-engine Ferrari. He just reels him in through the corner, and now he's able to allow Funniest Cowboy to make the mistake himself. I get the impression that this is what Cartman is struggling with. He just doesn't have the same traction and the same grip that the Alfas have when their tires are a little bit worn. So this seems set to be decided in Lenz's favor, not just because I'm Ukrainian and I'm rooting for him, but because look at Cowboy's tires. I mean, those hards. He will probably take them to the end, but he won't be able to defend this. I mean, come on. And he needs to think about not making another mistake, just like he did earlier on in the race. How are our leaders doing? Well, it's fine for JiiRabbit. Tires are going away for Cartman. It feels like a bit of a forlorn hope for him. He's close. He's definitely there. Any slip up from JiiRabbit and Cartman will be right behind him or even passing him. But that slip up isn't coming. JiiRabbit is just being JiiRabbit, the machine that has been all season long. How's Lenz doing? Ooh, a very fortunate moment for me to switch cameras as he's putting pressure on Funniest Cowboy. Let's go into this very unusual chase cam, completely unrealistic, and see how Lenz is doing. Will he be able to pull up? No, this feels a little too far to try and attack into the final corner, but it does feel inevitable. I'm gonna say it again. My money is certainly on Lenz getting this done before the race is over. Gadget is 8.8 seconds behind, so he is probably not going to challenge Funniest Cowboy unless the Finn makes a big mistake in the last 2 laps, but Lenz certainly can think of an overtake. The only problem Lenz has is that the Alfa is poor on straight line speed. So he needs to think of a corner to really dive up the inside. But look at that exit that he gets. He's able to decrease the gap by 0.2 because of a good exit out of the corner, not because he's better on the straight, not because he has a better entry. And oh look, he's just having to be patient behind Funniest Cowboy. I get the impression, just visually, that it would have been easy for him to drive faster were he in clean air, but for now he's having to put up with Funniest Cowboy. I'm just looking at the track map, and it seems that Cartman is even further away from JiiRabbit, from the leader, so there's no point in us switching to that fight. This is probably the most intense on-track battle that we've got going on at the moment. Lens is pursuing Funniest Cowboy. We've seen a very similar picture last lap. He's now less than 4/10ths behind, but the Alfa doesn't have that overspeed. Yes, with the slipstream, he's pulling up. The gap is now low 3/10ths. Maybe it's going to drop below 3, yes, but that's it. This, the mid-corner section, is where Lens has a big advantage. He needs to cook something up using this to make the move. Funniest Cowboy has no reason to pit. That will only cost him a lot of time, so he needs to brave it out on the hards, defending P5 for his life. And I'm going to switch over to the leaders quickly just to confirm it's 2.5 seconds now between JiiRabbit and Cartman, so that challenge, it was a valiant effort, but now it falls short as the tires are genuinely leaving Cartman's car. Let's go back to Funniest Cowboy and Lens. This is the most intense battle, as no one else seems to be fighting except for maybe... yeah, Flapjack and Mark. I saw them close on the track map, but actually there's a bit of a gap between them, so nothing going. Back to Lens. Still pressuring Funniest Cowboy. He has been close, and this perhaps, the technical section, is his best chance of getting a good exit and springing a surprise at Funniest Cowboy. Yes, he's able to put down the throttle, and he's now less than 2/10ths behind. We've seen this before. He gets very close in these latter parts of the lap, and he has to hit the brake at the apex just to avoid contact with Funniest Cowboy. This is very close, and the advantage is obvious, but having the pace doesn't always mean that you're gonna get in front. With competent defending, and that's certainly what Funniest Cowboy is doing, it might be hard to find a way past your opponent, as our leaders have started the final lap. Lens and Funniest Cowboy are still here on the back straight, hurtling towards the final corner, and opportunities for Lens are going to be running out. It starts becoming a bit of a now or never situation for the Ukrainian. If he wants this P5, he needs to cook up something fairly soon, as he also seems to have put way too much fuel into the car. Look at that. It's although it might be that is how much the Alfa needs for a lap. I just keep forgetting how long the lap is. So, final lap now for Lens and Funniest Cowboy. Final lap for the leader, JiiRabbit. Cartman is now 3 seconds behind, so it feels like this challenge is well and truly over. Tailboy is in no man's land in P3. Nobody's challenging from behind. Vox Bacchus is on course for P4, and we're watching the closest fight on track at the moment for P5. It's Funniest Cowboy defending from Lens on extremely worn hards, while Lens enjoys the privilege of slightly fresher mediums, so he's on the softer compound, but his car lacks straight line speed. The Alfa is not good on the straight, so Lens needs to find something. We are now approaching the hairpin that leads onto the long straight, and the leader JiiRabbit has been able to have a serious advantage over Cartman in this part of the track, but that does not quite seem to be the case for Lens. He's almost 5/10ths behind Funniest Cowboy, and we know from experience that that is not enough to close it down before the corner. I see Grand Tourist. My bet is on Lens overtaking after the straight into the left-hander. So that's where we're hurtling towards now, and not happening. That is just not happening. Or did you mean the back straight? AG27, he's going to need to do a hard send. It's going to be very hard to do a clean pass, but I mean, with the stewarding standards here, as Funniest Cowboy makes a bit of a mistake, it's a bit of a wobble on the apex, and that's just the invitation that Lenz needs. He's closer than he's ever been before, and he gets a better exit, so the gap reduces. It's 1.3, 1.2, 1.1. Will he dive up the inside? He thinks better of it. He positions himself differently, but for Funniest Cowboy, those tires are dying of death. They're screaming for salvation, and they're screaming to be replaced, but he's gonna have to get this car to the finish. Still a lot of corners to go, still a lot of opportunities for Lenz, and he's right up there. He's side by side with Funniest Cowboy, and Lenz is gonna have the inside line into the coming right-hander. He meets the apex beautifully, and Funniest Cowboy has no response to that. He cannot do the switcheroo, he cannot really dive up, he just doesn't have the tires to do it anymore. And there he has done it. Lenz takes P5 from Funniest Cowboy on the final lap. That was a valiant effort, of course, from Funniest Cowboy, and you have to give it to him for defending for so long. But now you can obviously see the grip is no longer there, and he's struggling to keep it on the track. And we move to the leader, and guess who's winning again? JiiRabbit, after 60 laps of Circuit de Sainte-Croix Layout C reverse, he takes the win from Cartman, who finishes in P2 with the fastest lap to boot. Teovo will finish in a distant P3, and that makes it once again a Finnish-Ukrainian podium in the Accelid Design Endurance Championship. Vox Bacchus scores another P4, so that's his third time in P4. Still can't find that extra speed and that one more step to get onto the podium, and Lenz gives us the old blinker, because that was one fight of a century. He takes P5 away from Funniest Cowboy, who was on track to fight for the win until an unfortunate incident and damage. Gadget and Vlive, after a bit of an anonymous race. Ooh, Vlive is fighting with Luco down the line, and is Luco gonna get it? Yes, he does! Luco takes it away from Vlive at the line. So Luco is P8 on the softs. That's what made him so fast at the end. He deprives Vlive of a P8 and demotes him to P9. Flapjack finishes 10th, and they seem to have had a side-by-side with Mark, as the gap between them is less than 3/10. And the top 12 is rounded out by GTO 250. GG, yeah, well done, Cartman. Oh, we've got JiiRabbit running into the stream chat straight away. Well, congratulations, Rabbit. That was another dominant performance and a fifth win in a row. Mate, you've got that championship pretty much sealed now. Thank you for the stream, Gran Tourist. Thank you so much for sticking around as well and for being so active in the chat. I really appreciate that. That was fun. I've had a good time tonight. This was quite captivating. So it's JiiRabbit who takes the win, and a clean race, but no fastest lap and no pole position for him this time, so not a perfect weekend, but I'm pretty sure he's not gonna pour any tears over that. JiiRabbit takes the win from Cartman, from Teovo, then it's Vox Bacchus, Lenz, Funniest Cowboy, Gadget, and Luco in the top 8, Vlive, Flapjack, Mark GT, and GTO 250 in the bottom half of the field. That was a wonderful little race, and we have finished almost exactly top of the hour. So for those of you who want to run and watch a bit of European football, now is your opportunity. I've been your commentator Prototype. Thank you so much for joining us here at the GT Ukraine YouTube channel. Subscribe if you're new, drop a like to this broadcast. If you are watching this in the recorded version, make sure to leave a comment. It really helps us a lot. We'll be seeing you in 2 weeks' time for race number 6. Until then, take care, and of course, Slava Ukraini. Bye-bye.